Good evening and welcome to ReachLawyer's Friday Talk Show. Today's episode on Royal Republic is a part 10 in the series of Desiccating Democracy. But before we begin today's discussion, I'd like to take a moment to introduce ReachLawyer to you. We are a network of lawyers concerned about the rule of law, constitutional morality, and the future of this country. Simply put, ReachLawyer is a legal training and support initiative to further legal awareness so, legal training and support initiative for civil rights movements, social activists, and individuals to empower them with their legal knowledge. While the core of our activity revolves around our work with legal fraternity, we also undertake various other initiatives to further legal awareness, social legal advocacy, and more significantly, to collaborate with various human rights groups and grassroots organizations. You can look us up at www.reachlawyer.org to know more about us. With that, I'd like to hand over the discussion to our moderator, Ms. Himali Sylvester.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Friday talk show, part 10 of Desiccating Democracy, ROILED Republic. I'm Himali Sylvester, your moderator for today. And today's topic is, are we hearing a discordant dirge of democracy? The preamble of our constitution intends to mold this nation into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic where all citizens have access to justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. But where are we today in achieving the ideals laid down by the founding fathers of our Constitution? Do we really have equality and secularism in a land where the love jihad law has become a reality? Can we really say that liberty and fraternity are there in times where eating beef has been unlawfully prohibited? And above all, can we say that we have access to justice in a nation where poor farmers who express their dissent towards a central law are today tagged as terrorists and Khalistanis? These are testing times that all of us are enduring. To understand what this means and the ramification of such draconian laws, we have with us and this amazing draconian law, which has been destroying our democracy and our sovereign republic. To understand this, we have today with us Mr. T.M. Krishna, a celebrated vocalist who describes himself quite simply as a singer, but is a renowned vocalist who has secured a markedly distinct place in the universe of Carnatic music. He's also an award-winning author, an activist, and the winner of Raman Magsaysay Award. We're indeed delighted to have you here on board, sir. We also today have with us Advocate B.T. Venkatesh, a senior lawyer, a human rights activist, former state public prosecutor, and founder of ReachLawyer, whose decades of work in defending the rights of marginalized communities, be it workers' rights, LGBTQ rights, child rights, or women's rights, speaks volumes and has endeared him towards communities that are marginalized, excluded, stigmatized, and oppressed. To begin this show, I hand over the platform to Advocate B.T. Venkatesh. Over to you, sir.
Very good evening. Welcome to Reach Lawyer Friday Talk Show. This is the 27th episode of the talk show. It has been a joy that we have been engaging in subjects so diverse, which affects not only us, every soul in this country. Today we have a very interesting topic. This is the 10th episode of Desiccating Democracy. Desiccating democracy is something which we are extremely concerned. Today's topic is Roiled Republic. What exactly is this? Why exactly that the kind of democracy that we have is in such muddy waters? How come that we have reached such a state? What was that promise that was made? In fact, thanks to the moderator Himali for having introduced the subject, for having presented the subject, so as to show that this is something which we all believed in. The founding fathers made it very clear that secularism is the mainstay. It's a democratic republic. To put forward the whole concept, the kind of preamble that we have, it talks in terms of justice, social, economic, and political. It talks in terms of liberty of thought, expression, faith, worship, religion, any of them. It talks in terms of equality of status and opportunity. It also talks in terms of the whole endeavor of this particular process is to ensure that there is fraternity. What exactly are these things? These words mean a great thing that at the time of the formation, at the time of the Constituent, in fact, in the Constituent Assembly itself, Dr. Ambedkar very clearly said the kind of nation that we have inherited, the kind of nation which are moving towards, the way we are moving towards, the construct that we are moving towards, post-colonial situation, that we are no more subjects, we are citizens. What kind of citizen we are, what kind of a nation we have, what should be the contours of this particular construct that we have, who makes this law for us. In fact, when we look into the whole construct, that this constitution is written by us to ourselves. So we made this law, we made this concept, we made this nation, and we have promised ourselves it will be a secular state. We have promised ourselves it's going to be a state which treats everyone equal. We have promised ourselves that everybody would get equal protection of law. The whole construct of the reservations which are brought into the law, the kind of laws that we brought in over a period of time from immediately after the Constitution, the way we 70 years of our republic, the way we have put forward so many statutes and laws, we've been trying to reach that particular aspects which we have promised ourselves. Have we? I think that's some question which most of the people are asking. They're asking these questions. They're asking questions that how come, despite 70 years, even as on this day, we have this discrimination. The degree of discrimination, even today, people are being killed for being a Dalit. People are being, the untouchability is practiced to the hilt. The highest number of rapes. You look at any of the parameters, we have to put our head in shame that how come that 70 years after the republic, we are still in such a state. Whatever exactly happened to our democracy? We had laws which were supposed to make, in fact, we have made it very clear in the Constitution that any law which is made by the state legislature or the parliament, it's very loud and clear that the law need to be compliant to the Constitution. In fact, the Keshwanand Bharti judgment made it all the more clear that once and for all, it said Constitution is supreme. Supremacy of the Constitution has been settled. It means that no state or parliament or legislature can make law which is not in compliance with the Constitution. What exactly is compliance with Constitution? Compliance with the Constitution is compliance with the ideals of the Constitution, ideals of the preamble of the Constitution, ideals which have been set out, all the fundamental rights that have been guaranteed under Part 3 of the Constitution, loud and clear. Right to equality, right against discrimination, right equal protection, equal opportunity in employment, right against any form of discrimination, including abolition of untouchability, taking away of all the titles, fundamental freedoms, freedom of association, liberty, speech, worship, travel, you name, profession, you name, all of these fundamental rights, right of liberty, and Article 20, 21, 22, right to religion, right against exploitation, and the very construct that all these rights are justiciable is also a fundamental right under Article 32. This is something which is an extraordinary constitution that we have, and it's supreme. The supremacy of this constitution is not to be questioned. Now we have such a constitution. How come we have lost then? That today we hear that there is a law as against love jihad. That today we have a law which makes eating beef is a crime. That transporting beef is a crime. That food is a crime. What exactly is happening? The kind of laws that we have that the state will not retreat into certain aspects, it is treating into all these aspects. The kind of law that we brought in respect of citizenship, which affects the very core of the Constitution, the preamble of the Constitution, the very first word that it's a secular state is being questioned by this particular amendment, wherein it brings for the first time a religion which is non-existent in our Constitution in all these years. What exactly is happening? Why people are in the streets? Why these questions are not being allowed? Why the dissenters are being persecuted? You look into many aspects, almost on a day-to-day basis, we get to hear that workers are in distress. We get to hear the economy is in distress. We get to hear small and medium entrepreneurs are in severe distress. We get to hear that the health situation is in miserable distress. We get to hear women's rights are in distress. We get to hear child rights are in distress. We get to hear the minorities' rights are in distress. We get to hear the rights of the LGBT communities are in distress. We get to hear the kind of income levels have come so low, it's almost impossible for one to live. We see that the COVID times, that nearly 150 million people walked the distances, broken roads, broken feet, broken lives, impossible. And we saw a huge amount of wage theft, that how millions and millions of billions of dollars worth, millions of dollars, billions of rupees worth wages went unpaid. Nobody to ask questions. A population that has virtually lost its rights. And in such situation, we get to see that we feel that the democracy is certainly is not functioning the way it should function. And we go to the institutions which seek relief. Those institutions are falling silent. Some of the institutions which are independent have become so bad that the institutions are now becoming subservient to the state's interest. It's almost impossible, the kind of laws that are being brought. Farmers are in street. The Karnataka was one of the land laws, which were most progressive land laws, have been done away with. So is the union. See, every aspect of life which we are looking at is being harmed. The whole construct of the Constitution preamble is being destroyed. At this juncture, we feel that the Republic is in a grave condition. So we say that this is a royal republic. We say that the democracy is being desiccated. And at this point of time, we have an amazing speaker with us, Mr. T.M. Krishna. Mr. T.M. Krishna is an extraordinary Carnatic, classical Carnatic musician, singer, an amazing person. An amazing person who's written a wonderful book, not one, so many of them, an amazing books, an excellent author. His books are a journey, an amazing journey. In fact, it was a joy for me to read his Sebastian and Sons, which is an amazing journey in itself. He's an amazing author, award-winning author. People are reading his book, the kind of work which he has done. We have been listening to him all these years, but we have been reading his book too. Amazing, amazing books which he's written. And he's an extraordinary activist. What's his kind of activism? And you have to go to his webpage and see the range of activities he associates himself with. He associates himself with almost all those marginalized, excluded, underprivileged communities. It's a large statement. There are so many of them. I can't keep repeating the names which you have worked with. But he looks at a large set of communities who are deprived of their rights. He works with them. He is trying to bring in the kind of culture, democratizing the whole construct of the culture of the art, music to the people. He shares that with one of the finest musicians, irrespective of the status, situation, language, culture, any of that. Yoga Pass in Karnataka has an amazing program. It was a joy for us to listen to his program. We have seen him doing programs for so many activists, whether it is dance, drama, theater, you name. He has been doing great work, and it's a joy that today he is an amazing critic, amazing speaker on subjects. In fact, if you were to watch his interviews, which are there on the casts, and the way he has amazing perspective he brings in, is something a joy to speak. And today, he is with us. It is joy that we have someone of that stature with us. He has been very vocal in his opinion is concerned. He does not step back and wait for some time to do it. If he feels that something is not correct, he would go by that. A person whom I see that stands with his constitutional morality, upright constitutional moralist, one whom I love, one so many of us love. Most of us would like to listen to him. Today, he has been invited to deliver this 10th episode of Desiccating Democracy, 27th in the series of the entire speeches, but this particular Desiccating Democracy, 10th episode on this aspect, on a range of issues, because he is one with such amount of experience that we have. Today he is with us to discuss the same. To end with, we have reached a stage which I would like to use from his wonderful book, Sebastian and Sons, that every voter in this country is like Parlando, the character of Parlando. The character of Parlando is one who is a master maker, the one who makes finest mridangams. Is a history, a legend in himself, extraordinary. Everybody looked at him that if it is something, a perfection, it was Parlando. We made it, he made it. But how is it treated? In fact, he goes and says that he is treated ni avan. He's somebody out there with no recognition, no respect, little respect. Has the state of the vote come to that? Are we reached a situation where we are totally helpless? Are we to ask questions? Are we to take steps? What exactly future holds for us? What exactly is the way we need to look at life? I think today we have these questions. I have also had this situation. I have amazing character of Sarda Sauriyar and the character of his book, Sebastian and Son, who is someone who gives you an optimism that we have a right to speak, an optimism that yes, things will change, an optimism that things have to change. I think today we have with us one of the finest speakers, an articulate speaker, and an amazing activist. And he also has won Raman Magsaysay Award. For me, awards to T.M. Krishna is one part. The number of hearts he has won speaks volumes. Number of lives that he has touched speaks volumes. I think that makes him so dear to me and so many millions of us in India. Welcome to you, sir. It's an opportunity to host you on such a subject of importance, and we're all ears to listen to you. I request Himali to invite Mr. T.M. Krishna to our talk show to deliver the lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venkatesh sir. Now I invite renowned vocalist, Mr. T.M. Krishna, to take up the floor. Over to you, sir.
Well, good evening. I'd like to thank Mr. B.T. Venkatesh. I'd like to thank everybody at ReachLawyer, Himali, everybody for inviting me to this conversation about, I think, the state of our mind and our hearts and our country and everything that we love dearly. And I'd like to jump into it straight. The first thing we need to, I want to say two things before I go into the subject, is one, that we didn't suddenly arrive at this situation like a hop, skip, and jump. It's not as if in the last 6 years we just came here. The last 6 years has been the time when the establishment has taken advantage of everything we did not do, we did not value, we did not respect, and sometimes we just did not recognize about who we are as people. And this allowed the establishment to manipulate, to corner, to monopolize everything, every idea that we enshrined in the preamble in the Constitution. We enshrined it in that document. And therefore, it's, I think, important to start with that self-critique. Adding to that, I want to say that pointing fingers is something that's so easy to do. I think there are different kinds of battles that we are fighting. We are fighting the battle of asking the difficult questions, of asking people in power, of different kinds of power and different levels of power, about what abuse is happening today. And that is an external, if I may use that word, a fight of not pointing fingers, but holding people responsible. But there also needs to be, and essentially, along with this very, very immediate requirement, an internal reflection, an internal self critique, an internal realization of what the so called progressive world of India has not done, about the contemptuousness, the contempt with which we have treated so many aspects of India that has allowed bigoted ideas to sometimes capture the minds of people or to twist the minds of people. And to me, that's a very important point to start, because if we don't, and if we are not honest with ourselves, this cycle will repeat constantly. These situations will keep happening, and we will have no mechanism emotionally, structurally, constitutionally, and as a society and politically to, to fight them, to resist. Because we have to think about this point. And that's where I want to begin today's conversation. You know, we keep talking about the Constitution, we keep talking about the preamble. And I must thank the young people of this country for having brought back the preamble into public reflection. Of course, academics and scholars sometimes even find that problematic, but I'm going to keep that aside for the moment. But the very fact that the words in the preamble are part of protest today is a wonderful sign. Having said that, when those words were enshrined in the Constitution, was it a description of who we were? Or was it a description of who we wanted to be? Because I think there was some blurring in this. Because I wonder whether we were declaring ourselves to be that. And because the people in power declare ourselves to be that, all wonderful, incredible intellectuals who we all respect. But I am going to ask this question. Was this a declaration or was this a statement of hope? Because if it was a statement of hope, then we have to say we did nothing beyond declaration, or we did very little. But if it was a declaration, then it was a failure of ourselves, of recognizing that we were not that we were not secular, that we really did not believe in equality. We didn't really believe in a casteless state, and we still don't. We only negotiate these words. These words are there for even the people with the best hearts to treasure and find special at moments, and then to say, kya karenge? We are like that, society is like that. So I think we have to reflect on that. What is the preamble of the Constitution? Because I would like to believe it's a statement of hope. That it was a calling. It was a calling that can we become this? Can equity, equality, freedom of expression, freedom to live one's life as they wished, freedom to ask questions, freedom to believe that if I think the Prime Minister of India is absolutely wrong, I'll point fingers and tell the Prime Minister of India. And I will also tell the Supreme Court of India, by the way. Was that what we were trying to say? Because it is the same Constitution that let the sedition law remain. We said all that in the preamble, but we didn't remove the sedition law, did we? I'm not even going into what else we did post that. I'm just starting from there. So it is a bit confused, even for us. That's one. The other thing is, if it was a statement of hope, what did we do post hoping? Because the first 2 decades after independence, I think, was to a large extent remained in the exhilaration of gaining freedom. So the 50s and the 60s, I'm not going into the other detailings of the issues that happened because I am talking about the larger scape here. I think the whole celebratory idea that we had gained independence and that we were now governing ourselves and we were voting and the people had the right. This whole euphoria around this, in a way, led people to move on for 2 decades. It's also true that many of the leaders who were part of the independence movement remained in the public eye, remained in the political sphere for at least 3 decades post the independence. So, in a way, I think there was probably some amount of that sense of value, that sense of morality that at least trickled or remained like a little thread for some time. But the fact is, that allowed us to think that that was part of our societal fabric. That thread was still just hope. That thread was still a yearning. That thread was not part of the weave of our society. And once that generation left, that thread, that hope also disappeared. So, what we have after that is a, a political, a social idea that began, shall we say, to tumble. And we never saw it tumbling. I know I sound very pessimistic, and I know you can say maybe the good things happen. Good things always happen. To me, or wonderful people did wonderful things. That's true, but we are talking about the system. Just look at the way we've been educated right through. What do we know about ourselves? What do we know about India? I will give you one example. Does anybody read in a textbook that caste is a living, horrendous evil that we all participate in? No. Does anybody recognize the people who fight against caste now, today, in the last 2 decades? No. We talk about caste as something in the past that Ambedkar spoke about or Periyar spoke about, and the evil that began maybe 2000 plus years ago, as if it is some reflection of something that's in the textbook. Does your textbook read that casteism is happening when you walk on the street? No. Does our textbook tell us that manual scavenging is a reality and the ugliness of who we are? No. So, what are we studying in our textbooks? Does our textbooks tell us about how we need to look at equality? How do we understand equality? Not in a one-line definition. So, what are we educated in? What are we learning? So that hope that is there in the preamble, where is it there in our lives? Where is it there in the way we study? And when it is not present in where we are, how do we even expect generations and generations to somehow understand these obscure terms used in one piece of paper? Sorry, that's all it is if it is not in society. It's just a piece of paper. I didn't say it, even Ambedkar said it. That these are just words on a piece of paper. So let's start by saying that, we can't expect to create generations of people who understand these ideas, who are not willing to engage with it, who are we not willing to teach, who we are not willing to reflect with. And we have done this for how many decades? 7 decades. Continuously. And at some point it catches up on you. So does our textbook, for example, tell us about the way Ambedkar came back into public imagination from the early 90s? No. Do people even know why? What do they know about the blue color? What do they know about the suit? This is the society we're talking about. Look at religious bigotry. How much do we really learn about it? Now, this is about education. But I'm starting there to say something larger. that whatever transformation we hope, because I think the Constitution, I've said this many times, is a cultural document, which is why it's not a perfect document. It's a document of culture. It's a document of a time that reflected the culture of the time and hoped for a culture that was far more embracing and open in the future. Which is why there are messy parts of the Constitution, which is where there are laws that had to be changed even now that still need to be thrown out of the window, which is why it allows people to manipulate, which is why you have delivery systems that can never be asked. So it is that body of culture. So if we are looking for an India that's robust culturally and that is breathing the ideas in the preamble, we need to create a new culture and cultures. And there is nothing called Indian culture. That's the biggest mumbo jumbo bogus that we have been selling. Not just now, right before when we did India festivals. There are Indian cultures. It's in the plural. There's no one culture. I'm now in a little village called Anakati, which is in the border of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. I just need to drive exactly 1 kilometer. And there are different cultures there. I just need to walk across a hill which is right next to me. It's a society I don't understand. So what is this Indian culture? Let's first accept and say there's no Indian culture. There are cultures, which automatically means when we want a transformation that embodies these humanistic ideas, it needs to engage with every one of these cultures with respect and with care. We can't believe that the preamble is what we want to become. Everybody become that. Nobody is going to become that. Because we also need to recognize that what is human nature? As a species, we are about power. We are about control. So we've created a societal system, whether it's race, whether it's color, whether it's caste, whether it's gender, whether it's sexuality, that is automatically about power and who controls and who oppresses and who marginalizes and who is marginalized. Now, this is the species we are. And fundamentally, our preamble is saying we shouldn't be that. So what we need to do is we need to change habit. We need to engage with ritual. We need to engage with ways of lives. We need to find a conversation between the two. It is not a question of replacing one with the other. The problem with the progressives, including myself, is we think that there is all these ugly things, throw all these ugly things out, bring all these ideas, everything is going to be hunky-dory. No. We need a conversation between all these things. We need links. And through the links, we negotiate the ugly. Through the links, we ask questions. We let modifications happen organically. We create reflections. But the fact is, we have not done this in our country. We have not done this. And in that, there is an important axle to this entire world, and that is religion. And I want to talk about religion. It's not about whether I believe in God or not. That's irrelevant to today's conversation. The progressive world has treated religion with condescension. The progressive world has thought of people who are in religion as people who cannot understand modernity or modern thinking. This is absolute nonsense. The progressive world needs to find faith as an important point of learning. Is religion messy? Of course it's messy. But what is not messy? Isn't the progressive world messy? Of course. So how can we engage with faith? Because faith is a fundamental human feeling. Hope and faith. Actually, the hope in the Constitution and the faith in religion, in feeling, in emotion, are not very different, are they? You may not agree with what each person is looking for, but emotionally, aren't they not? So if you think that a lot of changes need to happen in the world of faith, the universe of religion, and the systems that are there, you need to respect the emotion that exists in the people who believe in it. You don't need to believe in the system. And you respect that emotion and try to find a way you can you can touch these feelings and ask the questions then. Because we can't confuse progressiveness, modernity. Hey, modernity is what? Just modernity is just reflecting and living in the time that you're living in. That's all. It is not. It is not rocket science. We don't need to write books about modernity. Modernity is about being acutely aware of yourself, of the time you live in, of what's happening, and to learn from it and to react and not react, I'll say respond and reflect upon it. That's modernity. So we need to find that conversation because that also has been now cornered by the bigoted, by the people who believe that my religion is greater than everybody else, my ritual is greater than everybody else. If a Hindu marries a Muslim or a Muslim marries a Hindu, that somehow it is an act of kidnapping somebody from one faith to another. We have reached this point. People are creating laws for this. And the fact is, not too many people are complaining about it. We should wonder why. Should that bother us? We are only bothered by the people who are creating the law. But I am even more bothered that not enough people are asking tough questions and on the street. Why is every road in this country not filled with people bothered by everything that is happening from Kashmir to UP to everywhere else, to Karnataka, to anywhere, to Tamil Nadu, everywhere? Which means that there are many people who don't think it's a big deal. Which means that we have not had this conversation of respect. It's not tolerance of faith and religion. It is embracing of the many. To me, that is secularism. It's the embracing of the many. And secularism has got nothing to do with one's own. Secularism is, in an Indian context, the ability to politically and socially and structurally embrace the existence of everything. And because you embrace the existence of everything, then you say that the state will not get involved in anyone. That is why the state doesn't. Not because states think it's rejecting the idea of religion. It's because it's accepting every different dimensions of it. But what have we done to do that in society? But what can we do? I think a very important aspect of this conversation, because I come from the world of art, is to understand the role of art in our society. Art is intrinsic to our very existence. If there is no art, society collapses, society thinking dies. We don't have that recognition in this society. We think art is just pleasure or it is protest. No, art is not there. Art is art. Its very existence is your existence and my existence. Its use is secondary to its very act of creation. So art is created because human beings engage with themselves and society through that process. You can agree with what is done, disagree with what is done, and look at different dimensions of it only if it exists. And art allows you then to understand people better. Art gives you an opening for conversation between the marginalized and those who are not marginalized. Art gives you an opening to open up minds of people. Art allows you to see a color you didn't see before. It's a self-learning and a societal transformation, society transforming form. And form in the sense I'm using it singular, but I mean it in plural. So, because the political world sees art as a tool, the religious world sees art as a tool, everybody is using it as a tool to send messaging. No, it's not just a tool. It's our breath. It's our very life. And I'm talking about me as an artist, I'm talking about all of us. And art is everything. It's that little column you see in front of the house. That's art. It's the colors in which a house is painted. The poor person, and poverty has nothing to do with art. Everybody engages in art. Everybody designs. Everybody looks at color. Everybody chooses color. Everybody listens to a song, hums a tune. Why? Because that's where we learn. When you want to learn and transform society, we need art. And I think one of the important ways forward is to find methods, systems by which we communicate the hope of the preamble of our Constitution into actual songs, plays, movements in every village and town of this country. Children of different age groups must be engaging with these ideas in the Constitution, which means they also engage with the fact that those ideas don't exist around them. After school programs in villages. You know, as a child, you learn songs. If you come from a religious family, you learn some shlokas. Or if you come from a different religion, you learn the gospel. You learn something. Now, whether you transform into an whatever in your society ideologically, none of this leaves you. It's a habit. We need to create a habit of the preamble of a con. We need a habit of secularism. We need a habit about engaging with equality. The habit of coming together to ask questions. The habit to say what is in our mind fearlessly. It needs to become a habit. And that can only happen if we make sure that these, in the forms of various artistic rituals, I'm going to use the word rituals, are part of new art forms, old art forms. They talk with the Mahabharata, they talk with Jesus, they are engaging with Allah, they are engaging with what Periyar said or Ambedkar said. They are engaging with the whole plethora of ideas that is there in this country. Not that every idea needs to agree with the other, it just needs to talk to each other. That can be done only if we systematically create systems by which these very important, very important words are transformed to actual feelings. People need to feel equality. People need to cry for equality. Not just the people who don't have it. It's important that the people who have it need to cry for it. It's important that the people who have the power need to demand that everybody needs to speak. And the person with power must demand that he or she himself must listen. This can only happen if this is within our spirit. And that's where the song, dance, movement, literature, everything comes in. So my hope for us to move beyond where we are today, and I'm sure we will move. Let me just say this out there. I am sure we will move. The question is how much damage is done before we move. That's the biggest problem. But we will move. But if we don't want it to become a cyclical event, we need to change every street we live in. We need to be singing songs and dancing to tunes that are about the plurality of India, true diversity of India, and the fact that you can't reconcile India into one idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for addressing us so elaborately and so interestingly. Sir, so now we move on to the question and answer session. The first question being in a more broader sense that got me curious is that it has often been said that music, as you said, talked about art, and music is one of the most popular forms of art, and you are a part of that. So it has often been said that music is the best way to convey what one wants. How effective has music been for you personally in addressing social issues that confront us today?
First I just want to say that most people think that somehow music is or art is a magic pill. You just put art out there and the whole society will run. That's just utter rubbish. Who engages in art? You and me. We are messed up people. We are people who are complicated. So art by itself, by the way, is going to do nothing to society. So let me also clarify that we need to be engaged in art for art to do something. So as far as music goes, I think the one thing that is music's advantage and disadvantage is the fact that you can't hold it in your hand. It's not an object you can hold in a hand. It's not something you can keep looking at. It comes, it goes. So it's almost mystical in its very appearance, right? It's a tune in your head, it's a word in your head, it remains in your head. And that's makes music kind of very different from visual art or plastic arts or anything, the movement of theater, where there is a physicality to it. You can see the expression. Here it's just sound. This also means that it can tap on things that you don't even know it's tapping on. That's its great gift. So personally, I think it is music has helped me ask difficult questions of myself and everything around me. Only after I decided that there are very complicated things about myself and everything around me. Not until then. So art is not an accidental happening. Art is a very conscious human endeavor. So please let us not think art is some automatic thing. No, it's a very conscious endeavor. And because I say conscious, it doesn't become less magical. Magical things are usually very conscious. We have all these mumbo jumbo ideas in our society, that everything is appearing from somewhere and something mystical. All that's nonsense. We are all this is very serious business. Even the simplest tune is serious business. If I want to sing something in tune, I'm very, very conscious about singing in tune. It's not going to automatically come in tune. It's years and hours of practice. So it is also years and hours of thought that engages in asking difficult questions through the medium. It's after all a medium. Therefore, for me, after I continue to engage, I've not found solutions to anything I've said today. But I found that music is a way you can ask questions, but it's also important in a way to trick music. You have to trick it because otherwise you can be stuck in your own silo. I mean, I learned Carnatic music. I can be stuck in more silo and say, oh, raga is everything. Everybody experiences raga, and once you hear raga, you become a better human being. Therefore, I'm committing to society and transformation. It doesn't work that way, right? So then I must say, I want to subvert raga. I want to subvert the listener. I want to subvert myself, which means I want to break my habit of something. Okay, so there is something that you are shifting, and when you shift something, then something is triggered. It could be discomfort, it could be uneasiness, it could be a question that doesn't let you sleep, it could be complete rejection. That's okay, but it is that shift. So for me, music has enabled me to use these methods to shift something. It could be using an expression that is never used in this form. It could be having a conversation between two art forms that usually are not seen as being in conversation. So it kind of tricks our own brain of what are we receiving, what am I learning from it. So once you start doing these things, then music can become something magical and something special. Until then, it's rote. It's pleasurable rote.
Thank you so much, sir. So my next question is, throughout history, art has been used as an essential tool. I know you don't like the word tool, but art has been used as a way of protest and to talk about things, as you said, talk about things that are not happening right in the society. But now in this situation, we see about how art has come in the radar of the state, and the state has been using art to penalize people, like under really draconian laws such as the contempt law, which has now been used to target comedians and musicians and artists. What is your take on the state trying to particularly target artists in the sense, like, why is it that artists are being their targets?
I'm not even sure why we're surprised by this. The state is always the disliked artist. When is the state liked artists? I mean, this is the same country that banned Salman Rushdie's book. I mean, how is that different from this? Right? Let's be very clear. We can't choose when to have a problem with what the state is banning. The very act of state banning is what we should have a problem with. Right? So you keep quiet for 20 years, 25 years, and then you see somebody else using the same thing in a multiplied fashion because the person has more power. Simple as that. Right? The fact is, the state does not, the, the Indian state doesn't want people to freely express anything. Why would the Indian state want that? We are fooling ourselves to believe that the Indian state wants us to be free people. They want us to look over our shoulder. The present distribution just multiplied by X. Because the arrogance of power today is so much more. Very simple. See, let's put it this way. You can't have a system that depends on the good nature of the individual for it to function in a decent manner. You must have a system that will function in an ethical manner, even if the worst person is in power. That's the system we should have. We have things in our laws that are deeply problematic, that are being used by people who are manipulative and just horrible, very bluntly put. So therefore, that's why I'm saying let's look at the larger picture. Okay, let me ask this question then. Okay, say the government changes. Will we all remain on the street and demand that certain laws go? Or will we all celebrate in our home very happy because we have a new government? The truth of the matter, what do we do? We'll do the latter. That's the unfortunate thing, isn't it? Is that we suddenly think that everything is solved. No. Why would another government come and change things that are going to give them more benefit? You have Aadhaar coming into this country, which should have never happened, and it was brought in by the previous government. The whole system process, and this government just is smarter to know how to exploit it more than they did. Simple as that. How to manipulate it in a larger fashion. No, I just want to say this here because we have to think also in that manner. So what I'm saying is that the artists have always been targeted. What you're seeing now is an accentuated targeting of artists. That's what you're seeing. And you're seeing it more now because we have a draconian mindset in our establishment. We have a mindset that believes that nobody has a right to say anything about us because we are perfect and we want a certain country, we want to create a certain world, and we'll go ahead and create that world. That's it. Democracy is a farce in this country today. That's the blunt answer. And if any person with no nuance will come and tell me, but TM Krishna, you're having this conversation now, doesn't mean you have freedom, does not understand what it means to be free. First, TM Krishna, I say this because TM Krishna is privileged enough to say this. The person who's truly affected by these laws are not people like TM Krishna or Kunal Kantra. I'm going to say that bluntly. They are the ones who are making us pay attention to it. That's it. The people who are constantly harassed and hit by this law or these laws for a long time and are continuing being to hit are people whose names you and I don't know. They don't know. We don't know about what is happening in the police station in a little village or town. When they say the little thing. Or when the neighbor goes and complains and says, this guy is anti-Indian. We know the cases in Assam. You just need a neighbor to go and say, this guy is, I suspect this guy is origin. And you can have somebody coming and checking on you. This is how the common person is being affected. So what we should learn from this is when artists are targeted, especially people with name and fame are targeted, it means hundreds with no name and fame are constantly being targeted. So let us think about them when we think about this.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I'll hand over the platform to my co-moderator, Diksha, who will take up the next set of questions. Thank you.
Very good evening to you, sir. Firstly, that talk was really insightful and really sort of a realization of all the problems that there is, because it's not the first time that we are seeing this. It is just an exaggeration of the circumstances that have come because of our inaction since the enactment of the Constitution. Sir, in the past few days, especially after the enactments of the farmers' law or the labor codes, etc., the state is increasingly adopting an attitude that people do not know what is best for them as a means of justification for sort of everything that is happening. In light of all of this, how fair do you think this assumption is?
Oh, I would love to have a day when the Ambanis or the Adanis or somebody who are going to be standing on the street and begging the government of India to change a law that's affected them. I mean, it's never going to happen, is it? Because they are the wise people of this country who have to be listened to before any act is brought in or even the finance bill is written. That's the arrogance that we have in our state and in our thinking. You know, this is actually what we are actually seeing is a classic example of our caste system, actually, very bluntly put. Because the farmers belong to the marginalized sections of society, largely. especially the small farmers. And therefore, farmer doesn't know, uneducated, and everybody on social media has become an expert who believes, how do you know? Nobody is willing to go and listen to what the farmers are saying. Nobody is willing to ask for their arguments. It's not just the government, it's you and me. It's you and me. That's again an example of our failure as a country to respect different ways of thinking or different understandings. And the fact that, this is actually a question of knowledge we're asking, very philosophically. This is actually a question of who constructs knowledge and what knowledge do we respect. And if you dive into that subject, you see that it's completely messed in gender and caste. A man always knows better than a woman, and a man and woman always knows better than a trans person. An upper caste person always knows better than a person who's marginalized in the caste system, right? So therefore, our ways of making law are also entrenched in this. For example, we think many people will tell you on social media that you elected somebody to parliament, the parliament voted, therefore it's a law. Who are you to complain? That's not how democracy works. This is called a participatory democracy, which means asking questions of the people you elect and demanding that they respond to your understandings of it is essential to the way laws are made. It's not just a standing committee, by the way. Let me also clarify that. It is also everybody else. So therefore, why don't we think what the farmers are saying are important? Because we don't think they're people of ideas. We don't think that they're people who know. Because you and I went to a school, that's the only difference. And you and I can speak English. We can have this conversation from our homes. So this is entrenched in the way caste is entrenched in our society. It is just the way how is it different from men who always sit together and want to make a law for women and trans people? How is it? It's the same thing, isn't it? It's the same thing. Or for example, I remember, I think there was this committee that the Indian government put out, I don't know when it was, on understanding the culture of some ridiculous number of years, but keep that aside, of Indian history or Indian culture. The entire committee was full of upper caste men, all from North India. Now, it's the same mindset. It's just far more oppressive because the people who are being targeted are so much more on the margins. So it's terrible that that's again a reflection of how we see ideas, how we see education, how we see people who are enabled. And also there's another mindset in this country that the people from the margins who say make it in their lives have to be constantly grateful that they've made it in this country. Therefore should not ask questions. Right? For example, if the farmer sat there and had a leg massage, what is your problem in life? So because he has that facility, he doesn't have ideas, he doesn't have the right, or because he has little more money, he doesn't have the right to ask the question, or because he eats a pizza. I mean, it was just ugly and disgusting to see ourselves asking questions about these things, then realizing what was being said. And the state is only feeding into this and further enabling this kind of a narrative. For the state to say we will not change anything in the law is an example of the fact that this is not a democracy. This is a democracy if the Prime Minister of India had walked on the road instead of showing himself constantly once in a while in a broom in a very, very well captured video. If he had walked on the street, actually sat down and spoken to the farmers and listened to them and learned, that would have been a democracy. That is how a responsible politician behaves. But that is not who we are, is it?
Thank you, sir. But my second question is actually on a slightly different tangent altogether. And this is something out of something that you said as well. So perhaps one of my most favorite line in the Constituent Assembly debates is when Ambedkar stood up and said that on 26th of January 1950, India will be entering into a life of contradiction. The famous 3 warnings which Ambedkar gave before actually the enactment of the Constitution, and probably I don't think 95% of our population is aware of that very great speech. How true have we made those warnings? I mean, I don't think we have heeded to the words of.
We probably proved him right? If not anything else, haven't we?
Exactly, sir.
Yeah, unfortunately, I shouldn't be saying this and I shouldn't be smiling while I'm saying this, but it is ironic, isn't it? You know, that's the other thing we have done even with people like Ambedkar, right? We've also boxed Ambedkar in a set of words, in a set of ideas, right? That says a lot. I mean, I always ask this question of how many times in my home did I discuss Ambedkar? How many times did I discuss Gandhi? You know, and you know the answer to that question, and that's problematic. So what we've also done is this again goes back. Actually, it's connected to what I said about knowledge before, right? Um, you closet certain people in certain ways of, if they become, say, people from the margins become people of great authority and power and thinking and respect, then you very quickly box them into one idea, you know. So you don't have to engage with the larger things that are being said or the more complex things that he says, right? You don't need to. But if that person comes from certain kind of privilege, then this expanse of ideas that you celebrate. That's what we do with Gandhi, right? I mean, you make Gandhi this all-knowing saint who knew everything. No, the fact of the matter is we should be thankful that we had Gandhi and Ambedkar and all these people talking to each other at the same time. Each made the other, right? And that I think that is something we desperately miss today. This whole state of flux of multiple ideas. Right? So what we have done through history also, we have been reductionists in terms of what we want to accept as universal ideas that we take in. You know, I mean, let's look at this simple word like ahimsa. You know, it seems so obvious, but it's not so obvious. You know, when we say embrace non-violence, when I say violence, people only think of violence in one way, hitting somebody or being beaten up. But the question that I often ask myself is, am I even in a position to discuss non-violence? Because I have the privilege of non-violence, right? So even an idea of ahimsa. Now, what would you tell? How would you engage with that idea with a person who, or with communities that have been told for 1,000 years that you're nobody? Now, what is ahimsa in that context, ideationally? I'm not talking about physical violence here. Just keep that aside. How would you engage with that idea in this kind of a conversation? So we have done none of this. So what we have actually done is we have proved Ambedkar right simply because we have not realized the true nature of ourselves, which is what Ambedkar is actually pointing to. The idea of contradictions is because he's pointing to the fact that we are not what we want to be. So let's be acutely aware that we are not that, which means you have to robustly engage with what we are not and create, again, this is not just some ideational, some kind of intellectual conversation. You have to create systems in society that enable the transference of that idea into everyday happening. We did nothing of that sort. And I really believe that we are a cultural failure more than anything else. And I hold everybody responsible for that. I include Ambedkar, Gandhi, everybody responsible for that. Because I don't think any of them engaged with that aspect as robustly as they should have. This is something I believe, as robustly, not as tools, not as something you pick up and you use to do something. No, but as things that we are. So and that has been, I think, the problem in the way we've engaged with ourselves, because see, many of the things we are is because we emotionally believe in it. The fact is that the so-called progressive world is maybe intellectually we'll all say, correct, but emotionally we are all messed up. We choose when to discriminate. Let's be very clear. So why? Have we engaged with that? Have we engaged with the fact that when you open the front door, we choose who to let in just through an instinctive feeling of the other person? Tell me who doesn't do it? you know. So where is that feeling coming from? This is what we never engaged with. This idea that the human race is a race of emotion. It's a race of feeling. And if you want that to change, we have to recognize ourselves as cultural people. And people of cultures, people who allow seepages, people who limit seepages, people who reject this. And we do all this because we want to establish a very, very skewed societal structure where power remains with more or less the same group of people.
Thank you so much, sir, for that very insightful answer. I now request Shrikant to come and take over.
Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for gracing the event and for opening my eyes on the most fundamental issues that are, that is why these fundamental issues that we are facing crop up. I have a question. My first question is, there have been recent laws that have been passed by the government, which would potentially separate and cause an even deeper divide to our already divided society, such as the Citizenship Amendment Bill, the National Register of Citizens, the National Population Register, and these anti-love jihad bills. If these laws are implemented across the nation, what will be the aftermath on our diversity, our community, and our society, and the thinking of the general public? And how grave would the consequences be, sir?
I think the greatest impact of every one of these bills is in just creating greater violence in our minds and hearts and our beings. Uh, I think that's that if you're creating a society which is violent in thought, um, of all shades, violence of all shades, then you're creating a cycle of hate, which is primarily the reason these laws are being brought in. These laws are being brought in to create fear and hate because hate and fear are mechanisms of control. Okay? And therefore, now the thing that most people with that kind of power are scared of is the coming together of many. So the best way to avoid the coming together is to create more fear and more hate. And therefore, these laws are established exactly for that. You see, nationalism as an idea, I don't believe in nationalism. It's a very problematic notion. Okay, and most times when you see the state talking about nationalism, these are bunch of people who just want you to hate somebody else. Simple as that. So whether it's the CAA, whether it is the registry, or whether it is even the Land Act is also an form is also an act of hate because it is creating a cycle of distrust. It is also creating a cycle of somebody capturing somebody else's value, which is a violent act, which is a violent happening. So, and look at this love jihad act that's happening. I mean, it is just absolute spewing venom and creating and this is where I think what has happened today is social media allows you to spread something so fast that when you start rejecting it, everybody does nobody believes it true. Simple as that. And it's also empowered the one with the most amount of money to create the most impact. That has been something that is today's technology allows. If I have more money, and which the present dispensation has more than anybody else, then I can do it faster. The moment I've implanted in your head that somebody is an evil, is going to come and take you away, and you're convinced, how am I going to unconvince you? Which is why I went back to the point is, if that person is getting convinced so easily, what does it say about that person's original thinking? Right? And that's where we should be working, is my point. Because now we are working at this point. Somebody X is convinced that the jihad law is perfect because all these Muslim men are there to come and kidnap these Hindu women. Somebody is convinced. So what are we doing? No, don't be convinced. Don't be convinced. All this is a lie. All this is a lie is what we're doing. But why was that person convinced in the first place? Because for years that person is being indoctrinated through a system of cultural transformation to believe that somebody is evil. Now, why are people in Assam, uh, saying something about the neighbor, knowing very well that if you say something to neighbor, it's possible that that person will be put somewhere in some camp, because distrust is being used. So the most dangerous aftermath, and I'm afraid that we are going to have to deal with it. Let's at least come to that understanding. Is going to be the amount and the level of anger and distrust that is going to exist in this society. How are we going to cross that? Because if we do not deal with that distrust, let me give you another example of the United States of America right now. Okay, Joe Biden did win the election, but can we look at the number of people who voted for Trump? It's okay. What should that country do? Say, fine, we got Biden back here, so that's all. Everything is hunky. No. The question is, why is this state even there? So I think we should start thinking like that now, and prepare for a point when the aftermath of this is being felt, and plan for actions that can deal with the immediate aftermath of the hate and the bigotry and the anger, like Bangladeshis are evil people, Muslims are horrible people. I mean, how many divides are we going to create? Right? Or look at what happens to people from the Northeast in Delhi or any part of the country. Tomorrow, somebody else is going to bring up some law saying, I will not employ people from the Northeast. What will you do? Right? So, we have to prepare for that, I think, in a robust manner and go to the bottom of this issue and find ways by which we not only address the hate that is going to be filled in this country, which is already filled in this country, but also address why we are there. Why we are there? Why is there so much anger? Why is somebody always looked as an enemy? We have lost this entire spectrum of grey living in this country. You're either black or either white. If I agree with you, you're white and I'm white. If I don't agree with you, you're black and I'm white. How racist that sounds, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. And your mention of nationalism reminded me of a quote. Nationalism is loving your country by hating your neighbor. Um, so okay, this brings me to my next question. A general question about the government. Which has over time distanced in itself from any interaction with the people and the press. The government has not had any press conferences and has removed the possibility of direct interactions with the people who are facing the effects of government decisions. The government has sort of become a lone wolf, working and passing laws without consultation and review, and it manages to bring in a new legislation while half the parliament stages a walkout. All in all, they have bulldozed legislations through all possible legal checkpoints. So, in your opinion, sir, how has that attitude affected the nation and the people's lives?
That attitude is a classic dictator attitude. We've seen it around the world. So the classic dictator attitude is like, I don't want to speak to people who are going to be asking me questions. Okay, I want to only have a one-way conversation. I am this lord who knows everything about the world, who loves petting peacocks in the morning, and I've also become a quasi saint, and therefore just listen to my bhashan whenever I come out there and give you a bhashan. Now, how is this different from any other dictator? The dictator is this all-knowing, powerful figure who you listen to, who you don't have a conversation with, because you're the subject, right? This is like a monarch. This is what the monarch does, right? It gives you bhashan from a window. Now you hear the bhashan on the radio. There's no difference between the two. It's just the medium that is changing. This is a classic behavior of somebody who's. This is also a classic behavior of somebody who's so scared. Let's also say that. It's also the classic behavior of somebody who's very, very scared. So I won't be. I will. As I say that, I will also say this. That person is very weak then. Only a weak person is not willing to have a larger conversation with people. Only a weak government is not willing to consult people. Only a weak set of people will keep shouting. You know, they shout even when they win. I don't even know why. They don't shout when they lose. They shout when they win. Why do you shout when you win? Which means that you're always trying to bulldoze somebody because you're scared that somebody is going to ask a question. Which I think is what the rest of India must remember. Is that you continue prodding and pushing because you know that people who are like this are people who are brittle. That's the word I will use. The fear is how long will this take? How, of course, that's of course there, and I already mentioned it. But I want to say this in a positive turnaround rather than complain about this because this is the state. You have a large section of media who doesn't want to, they won't do anything. What do they want to do? There, of course, because fear is in operation, everything is in operation. But and you have a system by which this you have a prime minister who will not speak to anybody. Okay. So then what do? We keep asking the difficult questions, and that's where I think social media plays the other role. It allows for everybody to ask the questions. Now the challenge is how does one amplify that, right? And I think here I want to say one thing that is important for the world of the progressives to seriously consider the innumerable number of people who are in between on the fence. Because we have this tendency to push them away also. Right? There are a large section of people in between. Right? Now, they may be ideationally, I mean, they have different ideologies. They may even disagree with many things you're saying. They may support the present system in many things that you say too. But they are still people with whom you can have a conversation with. What are we doing for that? That's a question also I would ask. Because you have more number of people in the middle understanding why this is an oppressive establishment we have, understanding why these people are not talking to anybody, then you're building greater pressure. Then you're building, forcing greater responses. So I think this has to be strategic. It also needs to be used. The fact that this is a government that does not listen to anybody but their own voice. And irrespective of what you say today, Srikant, or what I say today, Srikant, this is going to continue. The question is, how do we push this kind of a setup? That's what we should be thinking.
Very well, sir. It's very well said, sir. Now I would like to hand over the bait to Himali.
Thank you, Shrikant. So it's a humble request from the Reach Lawyer team for you to deliver a small rendition of Hum Dekhenge, if that's fine with you.
Oh God, no! I'll just sing the first two lines and just get the word out. 1 second.
Right, so,
Just sing the first few lines, if that's okay with you.
sure, sir.
1 sec. Mm, 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 हम देखेंगे हम देखेंगे लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे हम देखेंगे हम देखेंगे लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे हम देखेंगे वो दिन के जिसका वादा है हम देखेंगे वो दिन के जिसका वादा है जो लोए अज़ल में लिखा है हम देखेंगे लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे हम देखेंगे वो दिन के जिसका वादा है जो लोए अज़ल में लिखा है हम देखेंगे लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे हम देखेंगे
Thank you so much, sir, for immediately catering to our request. Now I hand over the platform to Diksha. Over to you, Diksha.
Thank you, Himali. Before we move on towards the end of our show, I invite Advocate V.D. Venkatesh to give his concluding remarks.
Immense thanks. How to thank you for such a wonderful interaction. In fact, a subject that disturbs almost everyone in this country. And then it's something which I have mentioned. In fact, it was in the making for all these years. When you talk in terms of, say, the case of sedition, it was in the making from 1950 onwards. Despite the fact that we had the judgment of Kedarnath in 1962 when I was born, it continues to haunt us. Even as on this day, people are being persecuted, in jail for sedition. I myself have conducted so many cases at Bidar, at Bellary, at Koppal, at Mysore, at Hubli, at Bombay, all places. People, innocent, a maidservant, a teacher, a student, an innocent bystander can be prosecuted for the kind of offenses. In fact, it was such a thing that when you made a statement that prosecution of Kunal Kamra or Prashant Bhushan is not the thing, we have seen thousands of sedition cases against innocent tribals in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Bengal, Andhra, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, almost every part of the country, Tamil Nadu, every place, people being persecuted for sedition. One particular offense. There are so many offenses, so many laws to persecute people. People have been facing. The constructs that you talk in terms of is the impunity of the state that makes such a possibility. And it's happening over a period of time. And the way when we say that people are being questioned, this space is shrinking, yes, we agree with you, sir, when you say that. Yes, it has been the make. It's only that it is the power of X. That's the difference that we have today. But what matters most is how are we to respond to the situation of this nature. In fact, it was a joy listening to you that yes, the conversation need to go more. That conversation need to go to street. The confidence need to reach the people. People need to ask questions. And that is the only way in any society for that matter. Right from the French Revolution to any time which I have seen, it's the people who take it up and ask questions. The way the farmers are doing, the way people are questioning, the way the workers are questioning. Yes, there are instances, issues, situations which goes on. In fact, yesterday, while we have been discussing this subject, 7,000 workers who work for an apple factory in Bangalore have been implicated in a case. Did every one of the 7,000 commit the crime? That's the power of the state which implicates people. There is the power of the state which can just, without even thinking, blinking an eye, can implicate people. How many of them can afford a bail? How many of them can afford a lawyer? We do not know. They have not been paid wages for 4 months. That's the ire, their anger. That resulted in a situation which is there. Or how many of them did that? We don't inquire into, but we intend to prosecute everybody, to demonstrate that we take tough action to please somebody. Nobody talks in terms of the wage theft, which I was referring to at the earlier instance. We don't talk of that. So a state, we are in at times where I think more questions need to be asked. This is not that it's happening today. It has been happening. Whether it is the Aadhaar, which you were referred to, whether it's sedition, which you are talking in terms of, or whether it is the kind of prohibition which you have introduced, like banning of the book of Salman Rushdie to any of these books. There are so many of the books that have been banned. So many laws have been brought, even silence the right of the women, Muslim women, to maintenance. The Supreme Court passed the judgment, we brought in with a Shabana case, and you came with a law relating to it to ensure that you appease some groups. Now, somewhere, state does take steps which certainly are not in the interest of the people are concerned. This is something which is happening through. The only way you look at is that that little space that need to have and that little space that need to get is something which we need to push towards. In fact, as you said very aptly, we can speak because we have the privilege. All of us in this program who are listening, who are tuned to it, who are articulating this, have that kind of a privilege. But most of the people in this country don't have that kind of privilege. That's where the challenges are. That's where the issues are. That's where the question need to be asked. And this is some time where we need to be with the people, raise these issues, ask questions. I think that's the way forward. And we have been doing that, and great number of people are doing that. And there's a movement that's going towards that. I think it's time that we take constitution and ask questions because there's a document which we have made ourselves, a document which has some answers. Well, I understand that as we look into the situation that yes, we have not realized any of the vision of this particular document, but we have an opportunity to raise questions that yes, the whole structure depends on it. In fact, in my presentation, I had made a statement that is, we have Keshwan Bharti judgment, which said supremacy of the constitution. An imperfect document, many say, but I don't think so. But I mean, when it comes down to preamble is concerned, it is not an imperfect document. When you talk in terms of part 3 is concerned, by far it's a strong document because you have to explain, even under Article 19 plus 2, you have to explain the reasons. I think the problem is that we are unable to ask those questions as to what exactly is the explanation that's being offered. I think it's time that we need to have more discussions of this nature. It's a joy that today we have someone of this teacher, Mr. T.M. Krishna, who explained the things from perspective which was so stark at one level, so clean at one level, and at another level, which was something so endearing, who people, even a person who has not been not articulate on these issues can understand in terms. And the historicity with which he explained is something which I feel is of great value. So today, immensely grateful to Mr. T.M. Krishna for having joined us and spent time with us. And we would be again coming back to you, sir, because we have to talk about your Sebastian and Son. We have to talk about your books. As ReachLawyer is also talking on this because we look at law, we look at literature, we look at culture. We believe in syncretic culture. India is a country of syncretic culture. India is a country which has so many nationalities. It's not the question of a nation. There are so many nationalities which we have, so many languages that we have, so many traditions that we have, so many rituals that we have. And when coming from a small village, I can share so many of them, which is part of my existence, which my son may not even have an idea what exactly it is. But we have a nation which has that kind of degree of resilience. I think it's time that we need to talk to them. It's time that we need to articulate these things and these words, these discussions, these subjects, all the more. And thank you very much, sir. It has been an opportunity for us to have you for this program. I request Diksha to take over.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your remarks. 2020 has been a varied year for all of us and highly disturbing for various reasons. From continuous constitutional transgressions to online classes, the world around us has opened us up to varied realities. The vision of India of 2020 has realized the fears that have been encompassed in the past 70 years. From the anti-CAA protest to the farmers' protest, the scope of voices to be heard is reducing as the days go by. Cases such as Hathras continue to shock the fleeting memory of the public of the country. The excesses of the executive, complacency of the judiciary, and the utter failure of the legislature to create sound laws has been the reality of 2020. However, none of these realities are new. As in the beginning of his talk, Mr. T.M. Krishna also pointed out that these have become accentuated and perhaps more manifest now, but they have forever been a part of our diaspora. The talk by Mr. T.M. Krishna aims not to answer questions, but to raise questions in minds of those who have become complacent with these dismal realities. As we end this year, we remind ourselves to be hopeful that ultimately change is inevitable. But the real question is how much damage will we incur before that? From the team of ReachLawyer, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. T.M. Krishna for taking time out of his schedule to address all of us for the day. And thank you for all of our viewers as well as everyone being a part of the show. Thank you.